This is the MSI MPG 491CQP QD-OLED Super Ultra-Wide Gaming Monitor. And after seeing this beast, we're pretty sure that the M in MSI stands for massive, or mouthful when it comes to the name. Regardless, it's bright. Its HDR and color reproduction are all stunning right out of the box, and at its current price, it might be the super ultra-wide monitor to beat. But it tripped us up in one area, and we're going to tell you all about it right here, right now on Robeytech. Well, it's been about a year since we've started our in-depth exploration of super ultra-wide monitors here at Robeytech. And since the launch of our guide to super ultra-wide monitors, we've looked at a few models and a few new ones have hit the market. While there is a newer version of the 49-inch monitor available from MSI, this one right here, the MSI MPG 491CQP QD-OLED Super Ultra-Wide Gaming Monitor, may just be the value leader among super ultra-wides. But don't mistake that for us saying that it's a low-quality monitor. Its QD-OLED panel is bright and beautiful, it has features to keep the display in good health, and the experience using it was overall positive. Is it the perfect super ultra-wide? Not quite, but the areas that it trips up may not be a big deal to you. Now before we dive in, we have a few housekeeping items. First up, we want to say a huge thank you to MSI for providing this monitor for review and for giving us so much time with it. Secondly, we will be calling the MPG 491CQP QD-OLED Super Ultra-Wide Gaming Monitor by a much easier name. Throughout the review, we'll just be calling it the monitor since really big shiny thing feels a little bit unprofessional. Okay, now with all of that out of the way, let's get to know the monitor a little bit better, starting with the price. When we first saw this monitor, it was priced at around $1,100, placing it smack in the middle of 49-inch OLED monitors from Samsung, Asus, and Gigabyte. And when we looked at these side by side, it was really hard to decide which was the best value. However, at the time of this video, we saw the monitor retailing for as low as $800, so up to $300 less than when we first saw it. And that changed the conversation because now this monitor sits in a place where it is not only less expensive than its competitors, it's also become a far more attractive option for anyone considering a girthy OLED monitor. Now, it's been a minute since we last talked about super ultra-wide monitors, so let's just do a quick refresher just to see what we're looking at. As a super ultra-wide monitor, that means that instead of having a 16:9 aspect ratio or having 16 pixels on the horizontal axis for every 9 pixels on the vertical axis, we have a 32:9 aspect ratio instead. So when you do the math, instead of having a resolution of 2560 by 1440, this monitor has a native resolution of 5120 by 1440. Essentially, it's like having two monitors strapped together without any awkward bezels in between. Now, that extra size does mean that you're going to need extra space for it to live on your desktop. With a width of around 47 inches or 119.5 centimeters, you're going to need about 4 feet or 1.2 meters for this to fit comfortably on your desktop. And because of the curve of this display, you're going to want over 13 inches or 330 millimeters worth of depth. In other words, this is not a monitor for one of those tiny homes. As for the weight, the monitor weighs over 35 pounds or under 16 kilograms assembled, which is about as heavy as a bag of dog food for a Mastiff. And those are big dogs. The actual assembly is super simple. It has a heavy but slim base that secures into a vertical stand with a screw that you can tighten by hand. If you really want to tighten it down though, it does have a Phillips head on it as well. As for adjustments, the monitor has some vertical tilt, height, and side swivel adjustments. It also has more swivel than both the Asus and Aorus monitors we reviewed a few months back. Now that we know about its physical dimensions, let's look at the specs. We're going to go list out our monitor's details on screen, but some important features include a QD OLED panel, 144 Hz refresh rate, it's got 99% of the DCI-P3 color gamut coverage, it's got a 0.03 millisecond gray-to-gray response time, it's got 10-bit color depth, and more. Now, a few things to point out here as we look at the specs. Now, the first thing you might be looking at is refresh rate. You might be thinking, 144 Hz and saying, Roby, what peasant only uses 144 Hz on their 1440p monitor in 2025? And to that I'd say, how dare you, sir? There is nothing wrong with 144 Hz refresh rate. And number two, keep in mind that driving a super ultra-wide monitor is actually more demanding than you'd think. Now, if you haven't watched our guide to super ultra-wide monitors, which you can watch right over here at Robeytech Live, if monitors like this one interest you, you should definitely watch this before you buy one. We break down the technical side of using super ultra-wide monitors and the demand it actually places on your system. And hey, while you're bookmarking that, why don't you go ahead and like and subscribe to both of our channels while you're at it. Now, back to the refresh rate. If 144 Hz is enough for you, the updated version we talked about in the intro does offer a 240 Hz refresh rate for around $1,100. It also has an X to the name, so all of you millennials know it must be hardcore. That being said, while we tested the monitor, we played several hours of games like Microsoft Flight Sim, Destiny 2, Forza Horizon 5, and Call of Duty to gauge performance and color. We even played some Star Citizen because at least 2 of you asked us to do that nicely. Now, most of the titles we tested hovered performance-wise around the 100 to 144 frame mark on the system we used to test out this monitor. For context, this system was using a 14700K and an RTX 4070 Ti Super. As for the experience of gaming on this monitor, right away we noticed the colors were incredibly vibrant, which was amazing for the Destiny 2 Space Magic. Now, when we looked at the colors a bit closer using our ISO monitor test, we saw stellar gradients, clear text reproduction, good viewing angles, and solid color accuracy. Though colors did feel a bit oversaturated out of the box, especially with SDR content, but nothing a few tweaks couldn't fix. Now, just a quick aside here before we move on. Some people have asked about multitasking on their OLED with concerns about blurry text on a monitor like this one. In other words, is text distorted or fuzzy on a super ultra-wide OLED, and can you use it for work? What we can tell you is that we actually used it during the testing process for gaming and for work. And as best we could tell, there really wasn't an issue with text quality that we could notice. At least there was nothing glaringly bad about our experience. Now, your eyes might be able to see every pixel and every frame refresh, but we couldn't. Either it's not an issue or we're just too old. Be careful which one of those you decide is actually true. And since we talked a bit about refresh rates, we need to talk about variable refresh rate technologies that this monitor uses or doesn't use in some cases. This monitor does have AMD FreeSync Premium Pro certification, which means that this monitor has low frame rate compression, offers a tear-free experience, it supports AMD FreeSync HDR, and assures users that the monitor meets specific requirements for size and refresh rates. As for NVIDIA, well, you get nothing, you lose. Good day, sir. Well, that's not entirely true. The monitor may not officially carry the G-Sync compatibility, but it does have built-in adaptive sync technology, so you're not completely out of luck if you're using an NVIDIA GPU, and let's be honest, FreeSync, AMD FreeSync works with all of them. Now, that being said, we did notice some funky issues with adaptive sync when we were using an NVIDIA-powered system. We had moments in the midst of gameplay where the screen would just go black. We checked our cables and connections, but couldn't quite chase down what the issue was. However, we did talk with other users who have experience with this monitor, and they did not see the same issues we did. This could have just been a driver issue at the time of testing, so take it a little bit with a grain of salt. But since we had an issue, we always like to bring those things up. However, much like the update to refresh rate, the newer versions of the monitor does list it at having G-Sync compatibility. As for dealing with motion blur and tearing, if either of these things did happen during our testing, we didn't see it. The experience was super smooth and incredibly enjoyable. That being said, the monitor did default to its console mode out of the box while using an HDMI cable. This did lock our refresh rate to 120 Hz until we figured out what was going on. Now, what we did discover is that there is a setting underneath the settings menu in the OSD that prioritizes either console or PC settings for the HDMI port. So if you're having the same issue, now you know you aren't crazy. Now, speaking of HDMI, let's talk about the interfaces the monitor has. It has one HDMI 2.1 port, one DisplayPort 1.4 port, two USB Type-A ports, one USB Type-C port with 90-watt power delivery and DisplayPort out, one USB 2 Type-B port for upstream connections, and a headphone jack. Now, the last part about the headphone jack is a bit interesting because MSI makes this really big deal about the monitor having a console mode, which we just talked about. Unfortunately, that console mode doesn't account for sound, unless they're assuming that you'll be using a headset with your console. That said, this is a little unsurprising. Out of the monitors we tested recently, the Aorus and Samsung Super Ultrawide monitors were the only ones that actually had built-in speakers. Now, if you've gotten this far in the video and you're thinking, you know what, I love all of this, but I'm just scared of OLED burn-in, let me give you a little peace of mind here. This monitor has a 3-year warranty that does cover panel burn-in, and not only that, but the monitor is built with the health of its OLED panel in mind. This is a good time to talk about the on-screen display, or OSD. To access and navigate the OSD, you can use the control knob located on the back of the monitor right at the center. This is where you'll access all the OLED care options, picture settings, and more. Okay, so now for the question that is just as big as the monitor. Is the MSI MPG 491CQP QD-OLED Super Ultra-Wide Gaming Monitor worthy of becoming your next monitor? First and foremost, if you're the type of person that needs as much desktop real estate as you can get, this monitor has room to spare. So if you're a video editor that needs to see the whole project timeline, you're building a sim rig and you want to start with one monitor, or your favorite games utilize that 32:9 aspect ratio, a super ultrawide monitor like this one will be a great fit for you. And for whether or not this monitor will be a good fit, it really depends on what features are important to you in a monitor. Overall, we think MSI provided a good mix of features, but it's a slimmer mix. For example, this monitor does only have 2 USB ports, and they're only USB 2.0 ports. This isn't bad if the sole use of this port is for keyboard and mouse. However, if you're going to attach external storage to share between devices, this monitor can do it, but it's just not optimal for transfer speeds. The other consideration here is whether a higher refresh rate and confirmed G-Sync compatibility are actually high priorities for you. As we did mention earlier, MSI does offer an updated version of the monitor for around $300 more. But honestly, saving $300 isn't a bad thing if this monitor does everything you need it to do. But on the other side of the coin, if it doesn't, and you love everything else about this monitor, MSI actually has that more expensive option. The bottom line is this: if you have the desktop space and the need for a super ultrawide, and these considerations aren't issues for you, we can't find a reason to not recommend it. This monitor has a beautiful QD-OLED panel that offers a stunning panoramic experience, whether you're gaming or working. And that's where we're going to wrap this up. We want to give a huge shout out to MSI for giving us so much time with the MPG 491CQP for this review, but we want to know what you think. How would you use a monitor like this? What do you think about the features offered or the ones trimmed down for this monitor? And what features are non-negotiables for you? Let us know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, go ahead and slap that subscribe button with that like button and ring that notification bell so that you get notifications each and every time we post videos like this, either here at Robeytech or over at Robeytech Live. And if you want to continue the conversation, talk about questions that we asked in these videos or ask questions of your own, head on over to our Discord server, discord.gg/Robeytech. It's an amazing place to meet other tech and PC enthusiasts and talk about stuff just like this. And you know what? You might just make a friend while you're there. Also, make sure you follow us on Robeytech at all your other favorite social media platforms. And if you've made it this far, I want to say a huge thank you for sticking with me throughout this video, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.